biggest challenge probably facing front-end testers at the moment is keeping up with the rapid development of websites. It's so easy to find you've set up an entire suite of tests and then the next day a release has gone out without you knowing and the entire thing has fallen apart. Everything that you may have worked for now is completely out of date within a couple of days or hours or minutes even.
You've got so much complexity coming into the systems these days. You've got CI/CDs increasing the pace of development. You've got disparate teams. Responsive design means that you've got to test across multiple browsers. You've got to test across multiple devices. It's just, the complexity is enormous.
The key trend in 2020 could be the updating of methods of creating these tests to make sure that they are able to keep up with things and to keep up with manual testing, finding new issues, because you can build an automation test for whatever you want, but someone will find something new in manual testing. And being able to build that into your automation fast enough is going to be the biggest challenge. That and coming up with new technologies like Applitools or Cypress to be able to visually regress testing as well, things which automation currently can't see because it's not human. It doesn't have the same eyes we do.
The key trend for front-end testing in 2020, I think, will be increased use of tooling. Things like Browser Stack and other remote sources of devices are going to allow you to test on a whole range of kit relatively easily. Test automation is always going to be an increased part of that, so that you can run things overnight and get feedback first thing the following morning. Yeah, that to me, it's probably the way things are going, automation, but done the right way.
It's AI driven, it's stable, easy to implement, and it's a perfect solution for front-end automation. I mean, it takes away all of the heavy lifting for you. Major big point is around the maintenance of your automated tests. So with your dynamic content, it will actually be smart enough to realize this is something dynamic that gets generated as part of the page load, because it knows about the JavaScript, it knows where it came from, it understands that this is something that could change. It's not going to target that and say, oh, this change, your test is wrong, or there's a change here. It won't care about that because it said, this is dynamic content, go for it. And then also with like form validation or forms and those sort of things, how they change, it knows about those, it can read into it. So no longer do you have to codify all of these exceptions or handle those things. Was it the Ajax wait time scenario that happened like a few years back? Yeah, that's gone. No need to wait for that. When you've trained your test and you move along and it moves along your journey, and all of a sudden the developer comes and makes a slight tweak to some of the elements of your CSS or moved it somewhere or something like that, Mabl will actually still find it, because what they do is they actually capture 10 unique identifiers per element rather than just one. It'll still find it, it'll then still move on through the test and then come up at the end with a warning saying, something changed, do you want to accept this or not? If you accept it, the test has already been updated and your next test will just go on this new route. If you don't, it'll revert to the previous state and you raise a bug. So yeah, really, really easy to capture those changes, quite fast, and takes away a lot of what actually happened, the screenshot didn't take at the right time and that sort of things. It's telling you very, very easily where it is. Another big piece that comes into it, performance testing of your web app. How many companies spend thousands on having a performance engineer that goes and writes stuff in a completely separate tool to understand performance? Or we use different tools. Again, the tool dispersion, we're now going to go into this thing to now do this separate test. Cost money, cost time, cost us effort. This is all built into Mabl. It'll tell you these changes that come in and your performance has actually dropped. Address that with the developers. Won't fail your tests, it'll just give you warnings. It'll tell you, this is what I've learned. So yeah, and then also gives you a good speed index and also accounts for the differences you get with performance testing, because no performance test result will be the same ever. When you are creating your bugs, when you've actually got a bug and you've got your steps to reproduce, people always say, oh, I can't reproduce it. Well, that's gone. It's coming out with everything really detailed, what calls it did, what actually failed, when it failed, how it did. it's really easy to show what happened. You might still get I cannot reproduce it side of things, but at least you can see that on this special case, something did clearly go wrong, and everyone can clearly understand exactly what happened. And yeah, it's all downloadable, which is good for putting into your bug tracking or project tracking tools. Runs in your CI. It's very easy to implement. It's all based on an API, both ways. And once you plug it into your CI, it's actually listening for a deployment where you've plugged it into. Once that deployment happens and is successful, it'll kick off a test, as defined as part of your setup. You can go to APIs as well without interacting with the JavaScript. So this is another powerful part of it, where it's bringing automation to people who previously didn't have automation skills. And from this, they can actually dig into it and learn a bit of what it did and help themselves by learning through something giving it to them. I've always found a great way to learn is by example, and this is a great way to do it. So you can just put in your post, your URL, your body. Those are things that you can grab from your API documentation, and then it'll generate out the JavaScript for you, and you can go from there. Really nice, neat out of the box. And this is things for like where you want to set up data or set up users or set up preconditions for your tests, so that you're testing a singular side of things if you want to, or singular focus, and then go on to the next. And also APIs are much faster than UI, so doing that setup that way is quick. But open source is free. This I put in here to put the argument against Mabl. Open source really is not free. It actually costs a hell of a lot. It is implementation time, which is someone's time that costs money, that's taking away that time from something else that could actually bring revenue or better value. Maintenance, I mean, how many of us have spent days maintaining an existing framework? All of us, it's a pain. And that's where, and I'm talking about front end side of things here. The back end side of things is less maintenance heavy. But yeah, and then the rework of an implementation is often overlooked. So how many times have we gone around a framework and then later on gone like, what were we thinking here? This is not working for us. We need to rework this whole thing to actually work with where we are now. It does. Open source things generally don't adapt with where your business and your solution evolves to. Some do, who do it great. I accept that argument, but for the most part, it's not true. And yeah, the time has a cost to it, and it takes away from innovating.